Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Week Note. It's been a really interesting week. There's been some highs, there's been some lows, and I've written all about that in this week's Week Note. So let's dive in and see what's going on. Just before we dive into the content, a quick ask from me. If you are liking this video wherever you're watching it, be that YouTube or LinkedIn or whatever, wherever you're watching this, if you could give it a like, that'd be really helpful because it will help the algorithm, mainly the YouTube algorithm, understand that this is a good piece of content and therefore it should be shared with other people. And if you are watching this, perhaps consider subscribing too. So click the thumbs up and also subscribe if that's what is interesting to you. Let's talk about this week. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I've learnt this week, or that I'm kind of reflecting on a Friday. The first one is listening to understand. So this week was the first week where we really got to meet the client inside of this government department. The client are awesome. I've really enjoyed working with them this week. They're super busy, of course, but they've made as much of an effort as they can do to become available for me and the team that we've brought on to help them. We're not there to build a product or service, so it can be a little bit weird when we're introducing ourselves to other people who are not this core team who we're working with, like the people that they might work with and other people within this really big government department. We're there to help with some kind of strategy related work. I won't talk too much about it. We took the first decision, because we're not there to build a product or service specifically, we took the decision to spend the first week reading and just getting up to speed, focusing on how do we get a solid foundational understanding of what's going on inside of this, objectively speaking, really big government department. And what we found out was that was really useful for us, because you can't, if you don't, I'm trying to explain this with only one coffee in my brain, but if you don't have a solid foundational understanding of what's going on inside of this government department or whatever business that you find yourself in, or government department you find yourself in, you can't offer any strategic advice or direction setting without having that solid foundational understanding of what's going on today. You essentially need to listen before you can properly understand. And by listen, it doesn't necessarily mean kind of like sitting back on a video screen, like not caring. What I mean is more like active listening. So we asked a bunch of questions. We were like talking to all these different stakeholders and blah, blah, blah. So we weren't passively just listening to everything. We weren't kind of going away for days on end, just reading documents and stuff like that. We were reading what we needed to read to get foundational understanding, and then asking like really precise and asking certain questions that would unlock extra bits of knowledge for us. I'll add a video on this topic about kind of just how you can kick off a project, or how I think you can kick off a project really well in the space where you're not necessarily building a product or service. I think it's a very different way that you can go and approach things when you're focused perhaps more on the strategy work or more on the kind of roadmap planning type work, versus if you're there to build a product or service. Both of those things are really difficult, don't get me wrong. It's not as if one is easier than the other. It's a different approach that you might take for one versus the other, and I can't really do it justice in a week note, so I'm gonna add a topic on that to my video backlog and hopefully get to it soon. The second thing is learning to refocus. So I've wanted to review my OKRs, objectives and key results, for Q1 that I set. I wanted to do that this week. It's something that I committed myself to doing in the last week note, and I didn't do it. I also committed myself to making another YouTube video this week on another topic, not just a week note topic. And shock horror, I didn't do that. I spent my time in the evenings kind of squandering it, watching Netflix and YouTube videos instead. And was it a bad use of time? Yes and no. It was useful to have time to kind of detach and recharge and kind of give my brain time and space that it needed to digest everything I was learning about this new client. That was really useful. But I am kicking myself a bit because I could have done more in my evenings in order to review my OKRs and get myself back on track if I needed to be, and also to record another video, but I didn't. And I was thinking about why I didn't. And for me this week it's been really hard, or I found it quite difficult to refocus. So I'm really good throughout the day. So when I'm working with my client and this government department, I'm super on it. Hopefully they know this and they're nodding their head when they're listening or reading to this. Hello if you end up doing that. But I'm super on it for the entire workday. But then when the client work finishes, I need to find out a quick way to kind of refocus my brain on my own business work, not somebody else's. So I want to build cluster consulting to be more than just me, and no one else is going to do that work for me. There's nobody else. It's literally just me right now. But I do want to build the business so it is more than just me. And in order to do that, I need to refocus enough in my evenings and my weekends to give myself the time and the space I need to build out some of my own IP a little bit more than I have done so far. Folks might be listening to this saying, Jess, it's your third week of your business, give yourself a break. And I am. I also want to take over the world in a really positive way. So it's a real mix of the two things. I have some ideas about things that I might try out in this coming week to help me refocus a little bit more. I've got 3 ideas at the moment, and I'd love to hear what yours are. Perhaps I'm missing something. So idea number 1 is I'm going to create a second desk space. So I've got a sit-stand desk, a hydraulic desk, not here, but in another room. And I'm going to create that desk space specifically for cluster consulting work. So this desk space here that you see will be for the client work during the day and any kind of like video meetings, because it has the whole setup and everything. But when I really want to kind of like break away from everything that's here, having that second desk space that sits down so I can stand in the evenings, for example, I think I will find really useful. I've got a whole bunch of work to do this afternoon and this weekend to go make that space what it needs to be, but we can get it done. The second idea I have is going for a walk after I finish the client work for the day, before starting work in the evening. So this week I think I've struggled because I've been sat here, it's been the same space, so I've closed all of those Google tabs or whatever it ends up being, signed into the cluster consulting spaces that I have online, and then tried to start work. And it's kind of like, how can you start running a new race when you've just finished the marathon of the day? And I basically can't. At least I'm not doing a very good job of it this week. So I'm going to try and create physical barriers by going for a walk and see how it goes. I've also got my dog Winston, or my housemate's dog Winston, so I'm sure Winston would love a walk. Apologies, my housemates seem to be doing some more DIY. And the third idea I have is about I've written down in my week note, drinking a herbal tea. It doesn't necessarily need to be a herbal tea, but just perhaps if it's really dark outside or it's horrible weather or something like that, still creating a bit of a physical barrier. Perhaps I go watch YouTube videos for 20 minutes in another room somewhere and then have a break. Maybe I read some of my books that I need to read over here. There's a whole bunch of different things that mean I don't have to go outside to do this. So I'm going to try and do those 2 things. But I'm really interested to know if you're listening to this or reading this and you have an idea of stuff that I might be able to do. If you're like, Jess, you just need to do this one thing, please let me know. I'm very interested to try it. The third piece is around prepping for a post-pandemic world. So the last time I did any prepping was probably when toilet paper was running out in supermarkets, and it felt like I was part of the prepping community trying to, get all of the stuff together. A couple of months away from the end of lockdown life now, and I want to set myself up for success. I don't want to be sat in the pub or meeting up with some friends, and in a couple months' time, whatever date that ends up being, I'm not tying myself to a specific date, but when the world reopens and it's safe to do so, kind of being with friends, talking about the whole post-pandemic world. I'm thinking, oh God, I wish I would have done those things. Perhaps it's reading certain books, perhaps it's doing that home DIY, perhaps it's, in my first case, getting my skin care down. This morning had a skin MOT session. I've never had a skin MOT session before. I've never really thought about skincare in general before, but I've realised that in the pre-pandemic world, in the before times, I was putting on a lot of makeup every day. Makeup, by the way, is great and it's fantastic, and people definitely should use it when they want to, but for me personally, I was sort of relying on it to cover up some skin imperfections. Perhaps I didn't like how my skin looked that day, and I would kind of lavish on the makeup, and it did the job for the day, but it ultimately it's that reinforcing cycle. It just makes number one, it definitely doesn't help, and number two, it doesn't solve the problem. So I've set myself a goal to have glowing skin by the time that we leave lockdown. So I am going to work with my skin coach. Don't worry, it was just a one-off consultation. That's literally what it means by skin coach. It's a 30-minute Zoom meeting, at least remotely, where they go through your routine, and my routine is I splash water on my face, so there's not a lot to go through. But by the end of lockdown, I want to be able to leave the house, go to client meetings, kind of be out in general with my friends, and not feel like I have to put on makeup in order to cover up skin imperfections. I want to glow. I want my skin to glow as much as I glow inside of myself now. And it sounds weird to say, but if you've ever really felt yourself and you're like, yeah, I'm great, I feel that inside of myself every day now. But I don't necessarily feel that about my skin, especially on my face. So I want to get better at that. So they put together, they were lovely, this skin MOT person. They were from a company called Prefasal. I don't know, they have an amazing Instagram account with millions of followers, and everyone says that they're great. They also are based in central London, and they have really bougie, expensive looking products. So I'm not going to buy their bougie, expensive looking products, at least not right now. I'm going to use middle of the range products instead, just to get the right routine for me. But this person that I worked with this morning was lovely. They helped me craft a new skincare routine, which wasn't too onerous, was a little bit more than splashing water in my face to wake me up in the morning, but wasn't spending half an hour in the bathroom. And so I'm really excited to have my skin glowing more than it does right now within a couple of weeks. So watch out more for that. I'm also going to be, this is not the only preparation I'm doing for post-pandemic world. There's also a whole section on books I want to read and activities I want to do as well. So I'll talk about those in future week notes. Alright, so let's talk about next week. What are my 3 things I'm looking forward to next week? Number 1, I'm really looking forward to diving deeper into this client work that I'm doing. Now I've gotten this solid foundational understanding, I can build from that, and the team I'm working with can build from that to do workshops and whatever that ends up looking like. Number 2, I'm going to start my new skincare routine. So don't worry, this is not going to turn into a beauty channel, but just it will be really interesting to see how that goes. And number 3, I'm going to my neighbour's being noisy again. Number 3, I'm going to set up my second desk. So we're going to see how that works, and whether creating a separate space for me is the thing I need to do in order to give me the break and the physical barriers between the work that I do here and my own work at Cluster Consulting. So that's it. Those are the things that have gone on this week for me. These are the things I've learnt. Apologies to everybody who I've been on video calls with this week. My next door neighbours have been installing a kitchen, I think, and it's been very noisy. You might be able to hear some of it in the background now. So hopefully that also finishes this weekend and we don't have to hear that anymore for a long time. So that's everything I have to talk about. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day and see you soon. Bye.